I'm Alicia.
And I'm Maddie.
And welcome to the Fangirl Diaries, a podcast where we talk about our obsessions,
Reminisce about our teen icons,
and explore the books, movies, and shows that made us the incredibly nerdy 30-somethings that we now are. Hello!
Hey, good morning.
It's fancy seeing you again. This is our coffee break episode. So this is a slightly different format that Maddie and I are doing today, where we're talking across a number of our obsessions, a number of different films, books, etc. We've got coffee and tea in our hand. At some point, this will have to be like a wine break episode. But for now, we're very much in the breakfast arena of things.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about different themes that kind of cross across all our different obsessions. And today's theme is heroines.
Well, we really felt that we were going to hold back on doing the book boyfriends episode until we had like 5 days that we could just get into it. So we've gone with heroines, which I'm sure will actually end up being chunky enough that we'll have to do multiple parts. But we've had a bit of a pre-chat about what we thought we would want to cover. And Maddie and I have obviously been friends for a bazillion years, but we thought it might be good to trace back some of the DNA of the heroines that we loved in books, films, etc. See how they relate to each other.
Yeah.
And see if there's any kind of patterning there in terms of what formed our brain chemistry, the brain chemistry of the authors that now write as contemporaries of ours. And the answer is, yes, we can.
Yeah.
Yes, we found some similarities.
What makes a good heroine to us, and what kind of, gets us to be able to engage with a main character like that?
Yeah, who do we love? Who are we obsessed with? Who are the female heroines that we have gone to, oh my god, way too many costume parties dressed as? I think we covered that in the Wicked episode.
Yeah.
But there are many. So to kick this off, Maddie and I are very, very lucky to be, well, I think we're lucky to be children of the 90s. I feel like we lived in a sort of golden era. Maybe people who are adults in the 90s can tell us that it was awful or something, but
as kids,
we liked it.
Pretty good.
Yeah, the 90s rocked. And that meant that we were able to experience 90s Disney.
Yeah.
And it's like we have to start there because we became like literate. Like we started reading books at the time that we were watching. This was our cinema content.
Yeah,
Disney
the kinds
in
of stories that Disney told in the 90s were what we thought of as like the best kind of storytelling, because that was, our introduction to great movies.
Yeah, that was Hollywood to children in the 90s just was whatever Disney film came out that year.
Yeah.
And I think in retrospect, this is even recognised as sort of a sub-canon within the wider Disney canon. This is, the 90s is like high Disney.
Yeah.
Renaissance Disney.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we were so lucky that that was our young person experience. But I am convinced that something was happening at Disney with feminism as part of that high 90s revivalist genre.
Yeah.
Because if you look at, and now thanks to Disney Plus, you can at the click of a button. This podcast does not sponsor Disney Plus. We're just merely appreciative. If you go back and watch like earlier Disney, I would challenge you to find a decent Disney princess or Disney heroine that isn't just about singing and dresses and marrying the prince. And there's a lot of, well,
then that's from Shrek. So.
I know. That's the vibe. And actually Shrek
plays with that trope. Yeah.
Plays with it so well.
Yeah.
But those Disney princesses didn't really do anything for me.
Yeah, they were of their time, but they were not of our time.
Yeah. Whereas we were children starting to imbibe this kind of storytelling in the age of, to list a few, Pocahontas, Meg, Esmeralda, like your
Mulan.
Oh my god, Mulan. Absolutely. That the age of the traditional wears lots of dresses and goes to a ball princess had kind of come to a close.
Yeah, I mean, they still existed. We still had like Belle and Ariel, but they still just got more interesting stories than some of the older princesses.
Yeah, they did. Actually, like maybe Belle is also quite a good place to start because she's relatively early on in the 90s Disney kind of chronology. And I will admit that me and my other 30-something-year-old friend Olivia watched Beauty and the Beast 2 weeks ago. Because it's so good. And there were no children involved.
No.
So it's just the two. This was also like a Saturday night or something. This is who we've become. I think we went through the various options of like what to do and swiftly landed on the fact that we were going to watch a 90s Disney film. And anyway, we ended up watching Beauty and the Beast. But Belle is bookish, intelligent. The film starts with her rejecting what would have been like town hottie Gaston. And just being like, no, thank you. Not interested in that. And so even she has a bit more dynamism to her than some of the earlier Disney princesses. But it does end up eventually with her in the classic gold dress and... it
image-wise, she can fit in with the other princesses. But yeah, you're right, she's more interesting. But then, when you jump to characters like Mulan and Pocahontas, you're really... they arguably don't fit into the princess mold, at least the traditional one, and kind of created a new definition of what a Disney princess was. And a Disney princess... from then on became more about having your own mind and going against the grain. And I think they kind of started that throughout the 90s. And now the Disney Princess brand uses that consistently, but it was definitely, started off in that kind of era.
I think it was even, like the 90s was the shift from Disney Princess to, I was like, to heroine.
Yeah.
That was it. I mean, Olivia and I did have a very intense discussion about whether Pocahontas was technically a princess, because she's technically like the daughter of the chief anyway.
I mean, we could go into all of the details of what a Disney princess is, and it's a brand. It's nothing to do with whether they're a princess in the film or not. It's a brand, the marketing brand.
But it had moved totally away from that, and everything suddenly got better. Like, the script writing became wittier. When you look at the writing in something like Hercules, Meg is running verbal circles around Hercules.
I love Meg.
I love Meg
Meg
too.
is so good.
That's what I mean. I was suddenly going to the cinema. And it was a huge event as well. Like, do you remember the Disney films coming out? And you'd go to the cinema to see these. It was huge. And it was like once a year, every year, the new big Disney film came out. And... like, the girls that were in it were a new level of cool. And there was even a child version of what I would say grew up to be cosplaying. Because now all the people that grew up on 90s Disney go to, well, maybe not everyone, but like particularly geeky people, of which we may count you and I, can go and dress up as their favourite fantasy heroines. And... if anyone doesn't know what cosplay is, it's where you dress up as your various favourite book
very
characters.
intricate costumes and really try and encapsulate that character and become that character.
Yeah, it's like an advanced level of dress up.
Yeah.
But that, I wonder if the germination of that in some way was the minute a new Disney film came out and you were obsessed with a new Disney heroine, the absolute pièce de résistance was to be able to go to the Disney store. And to get the outfit.
Get a dress. Or if you couldn't go to the Disney store, just like kind of cobbling together one from like a random petticoat that you could find in your mum's cupboard.
Yeah!
Like, finding a stick to become a wand or whatever.
100%, that's exactly it. That it was... And then when everybody had like dress up parties or stuff, when we had like birthday parties in the 90s... it was just a who's who of what Disney princess. That was what you were doing. But I remember getting... I don't think I had any of the, like, princess dresses from the Disney store.
No.
But I did get the Meg dress.
Oh, wow.
The purple one.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking, I'm going to wear this every day. This is the only thing I want to wear. This is it. With the sash, and it's slightly off the shoulder.
Yeah.
and it was cool.
I mean, at university, I went to a uni party, which was a dress-up party, like a costume party as Meg. And I think I found some kind of cheap purple dress from, like, Primark and put together a cardboard little wheel to hold it, like a pin to hold it off the shoulder. Just very difficult.
But I would argue that so many things shifted in 90s Disney, particularly surrounding the heroines, that gave rise to some things that we then see, like if you follow it through, in young adult fiction and in what's even now new adult fiction, because the people who are writing now, your Sarah J. Maas's, your Rebecca Yarros's, who we've already discussed, Stephanie Meyer would have lived through 90s Disney, all of this. The female heroines had the dialogue that's written for them is a little bit sexier. It's a little bit sassier. 90s Disney starts to introduce several enemies to lovers plot lines.
Yeah.
I wonder where we see that now. Like over and over again. Technically, before there's any kind of romance narrative, Meg and Hercules are bickering with each other the entire time.
Yeah.
You get Pocahontas and John Smith, two of my favourites, definite enemies to lovers story arc. So the bones of that Disney structure really paved the way for, I think, a lot of what we read and watched later.
Of that era, which is your favourite Disney heroine?
Oh my God. Can you answer that first, Maddie? And then
yeah,
about it.
I think so. Controversially, my favourite Disney movie is Hercules, but actually, I think my favourite heroine would be Mulan. I think I could rewatch Mulan and just the song where she's like singing into the mirror and in the water, and I just love that story. And I think so I think the one that I connected with the most was definitely Mulan.
And as a tangent, and then this is just buying me buying time to think about who's my ultimate Disney heroine, but this is also the moment where you get the conflation of awesome heroines and musical theatre.
Oh, yeah.
Which, again, is something that we then ended up, like, what a surprise that we ended up being obsessed with musicals.
Yeah.
Because we grew up on people singing on 90s Disney.
Lea Salonga sang both Mulan's parts and, I think, Pocahontas's parts, and she's one of my, like, ultimate musical theatre heroines, I guess.
Yeah. In fact, that's interesting because those two, the singing voice is so noticeably good. Whereas, in some of 90s Disney, whoever is doing the voice, when they sing, it's sort of all right.
Yeah.
And then the credits roll and you get the same song again, but with like Christina Aguilera singing or like Whitney Houston. And you're just like, oh,
yeah,
I see. This is what it was meant to sound like. But I think my favourite... I also adore Hercules. I just think it's an absolute showstopper. That's probably my like guilty pleasure favourite. That's probably the funnest one.
It is.
If I had to pick one to watch, it would be that. I think Pocahontas is sort of the masterpiece in some way, but nothing gets me as much as
but what about the heroine?
Sorry,
the female
heroine.
character.
Okay. Maybe it is also Mulan. I think we're just the same person.
Maybe we're extremely boring.
And there's so much of, we were speaking recently about Katniss, and maybe this is a way to segue, like, think about who from Disney is almost the precursor to what fantasy heroines and stuff like Mulan is your Disney action figure, basically.
Yeah.
She volunteers.
Yeah.
Well, she doesn't volunteer. She takes her dad's place, doesn't she?
Yeah.
To go to the war. And all the brilliant fantasy elements are there. She's undercover. There's weapons training.
Some of the best songs.
Some of the best songs. I love that film. So yeah, she was sort of the birth of because even though you get sassy heroines, you don't really get the action content until we get to Mulan.
Yeah, that's true.
I would say.
So then when we're seeing, like, as we're kind of growing up, who did we see as we were kind of growing out of Disney? I mean, you never grow out of Disney, but as we were kind of growing up into our kind of pre-teens, teens, who's the next kind of heroines to launch into our lives.
It just has to be Hermione Granger. It just... So, not only were we lucky enough to grow up on 90s Disney, but we were also the right age for Harry Potter.
Yeah.
And those books came out when we were the age the Harry Potter characters were.
Yeah. I think we experienced something really, like, crazy and special those books coming out literally as we were the ages of the characters. It was, crazy.
I just can't believe that the universe like allowed me to be lucky enough to experience Harry Potter with like when it was released and all of that. But it meant that the heroine of Harry Potter is Hermione, for sure. But she involves a slightly different discussion because she's not really the same as almost anyone else that we're going to discuss. But she definitely... I loved seeing Hermione there because she made being basically a nerd cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, she absolutely runs rings around Hermione. Hermione runs rings around Ron and Harry. Those two would be dead multiple times over.
Oh, 100%. She was the brains, and also not even just the brains in a like kind of intellectual, bookish, nerdish way. She was that, but she was also like quite ruthless and just like getting on with getting stuff done, and like when it needed to happen she was there. She was like she was the force between the three of them.
Like Hermione got shit done from the level of just making sure. There were so many times in the book that Hermione literally like makes sure the boys are like awake on time, or like have packed the right clothes, or like sometimes rereading it as an adult I'm like, this is so true. Oh my god, this is so true. But they appreciate her for it, and there is such love for what Hermione brings to the trio from Ron and Harry, obviously in slightly different ways. But she certainly made... I loved that in the most popular like children's fantasy series during our childhood, the heroine was someone that I thought, oh, we could be her.
Yeah.
She cares about her homework. And they make fun of her for it, but I was like, we would have written a 3-page essay.
And it's also partly the start of the heroine being someone who's not necessarily 100% likeable. Like, she is slightly annoying. And at the beginning, I mean, I think for the most of the first book, she's not actually really friends with Ron and Harry.
Yeah.
They kind of reject her for a while until they realise later in the book that she's, she's a really good friend. But she's not like immediately likeable. She continues to be not popular at school for most of the series. And yet that's okay. Like, she's accepted for being a bit annoying sometimes because she has so many like other great qualities, and they appreciate her as a friend. And
she's explicitly not pretty.
Yeah.
This gets forgotten because Emma Watson is cast in the films.
Yeah.
And they have to sort of uglyify her.
Which is impossible.
It's impossible. But the books are really generous in talking about how average to bad looking Hermione is. Although that it is also the first, I think, children's book series where we get what now is referred to as like the glow up.
Yes.
At one point, is it the 4th book? Yeah, for the Yule Ball. That's right. We get the Hermione coming down the stairs in a slightly cooler dress.
Although that just reminded me of the classic one of those that always just makes me laugh. Did you remember, I mean, this is before our time, but it's a classic movie, The Breakfast Club.
Yes.
In the 80s. And oh my goodness, there's the ending where the girl who's like kind of a little bit edgy and gothy and cool is suddenly like quote unquote glowed up at the end to make her look beautiful, and it's like she looks so much worse at the end. She's like boring looking, like fresh faced, but like she's pulled the hair that's been flopping over her face away to show her clean, beautiful face, but it's just like so much worse than her like cool look before. So I think that glow up trope is like, it's an interesting one.
I love that film so much, but maybe this is where we slightly different because I wanted to be Molly Ringwald's character in that film. And she puts the eyeliner on her. She does her makeup, doesn't she?
Yeah.
in a sort of attempt to be friends. Yeah. God, I love that movie. We have to talk about that separately. and we must put that on our list. Right, there we go. Stand by, everybody. We're going to do The Breakfast Club another time because it is incredible. But yeah, Hermione was very much present throughout our childhood. But she did segue into, so when the final Harry Potter book came out, there probably wasn't much of a gap between that and when we start to get into our YA, our young adult, teenage, and we start to get Twilight.
Which did it start with Twilight? I think it probably did.
But before we come out of the 90s, I just have to nod to, like, I loved Hermione, but in terms of fantasy escapism, I didn't ever want to be Hermione. I knew on some level you and I probably were Hermione-esque characters, but she wasn't cool.
She wasn't, like, necessarily aspirational. You know who I wanted to be in Harry Potter?
Who?
I wanted to be Luna Lovegood.
Oh, lol!
I wanted to be way more quirky and interesting than I actually was.
Oh my god. Maddie, what did you and I do when we were about 14 years old?
Oh, obviously we went along to the open call auditions for Luna. There were thousands and thousands of people, girls, all our age, queuing for hours and hours for the chance to just get into this room. I think it was like a big hall, and they just lined up 30 of us at a time, pointed at one or two to carry on, and the rest of us all went home. We literally were there for, I don't know, 8 hours probably?
I remember it as one of the funnest days of my life. And it has nothing to do with you. Like, neither you or I look anything like Luna Lovegood. But we both sort of acknowledged that we just had to be part of this cultural phenomenon. We just had to be there.
Well, also the chance, that 1 in a million chance that your life could be changed. That was sitting underneath our, like, casual, like, oh, it'll just be a fun day to go along. Underneath it, I reckon there was but what if I was chosen?
I know. But we got to stand in the queue with, I just love that we were there with the fans. It felt like one of those stage door experiences or premiere experiences. It was like being part of the fandom. And we were loving it. Like Lizzo from Newsround was there. Yeah. We were like, this is a big deal. If Lizzo from Newsround is here, it's a big deal.
And obviously it was partly just the chance to be in one of the, like, biggest movies ever. But I do also think there was something about that female character that people did love.
Yeah.
And again, she was somebody who was quite different. She was a bit of an outcast, but she just ultimately got to be herself and was allowed to just be whatever she wanted to be and who she was without, like, interference. And she never changed. She just was weird and lovely and, you know, coming up with these quirky stories and conspiracies and, like, yeah, she was just allowed to be herself, which I think is similar to someone like, you know, striving to be themselves, like Mulan or something.
I love that you wanted to be Luna. I'm like, good for you, because if we go back to if we're still in that 90s space, like, I loved 90s Disney, but I wanted to be Buffy. Oh my god, I wanted to be Buffy.
Yeah.
So while 90s Disney was happening, and my sister and I were very much allowed to watch that, you know, that was for children.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you watch Buffy at the time?
Yes.
Oh.
But it was sort of this secret knowledge that, because I think Buffy overall is rated a 15, and it's definitely not for children. And I remember at primary school, the people who had access to Buffy, and I'm talking about, like, the VHS tapes, or it had started to be shown on, like, a Tuesday night at 9 p.m. on some sort of TV channel. But I'm pretty sure I had 2 friendships that were based solely on the fact that at their house they had videos of Buffy.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Freya. That was the basis of our friendship. I was just like, some people's parents really didn't care and didn't mind what we watched. But I remember first watching Buffy and thinking, oh my god, this is it. And Buffy is slightly older. Buffy starts at 16. So Buffy was this, like, super cool teenager. For, like, anyone who doesn't know, Buffy is the vampire slayer. And so she's like an action heroine, but it was more than that. She's also, like, a cool high school girl. She wore, like, awesome 90s clothes. Buffy was wearing the kind of clothes that were available at specifically the shop Tammy Girl, which again, you had to we're lucky to be allowed to go there. And yeah, Buffy is all the 90s kitsch fashion. And yeah, I wanted to be her. But she was in the same vein as, I remember going to our gymnastics team dress up Halloween party, not as Buffy, because you couldn't really go dressed as Buffy.
Buffy just looked like a person.
Buffy just looked like a cool 90s teenager. He maybe brought like a wooden stake from the garden, some sort of garden peg.
Yeah.
Pretending to be Buffy. But somewhere around, it's either the late 90s or the early 2000s, it must have been about 9. There was no question I wanted to go dressed up as Lara Croft. Who we also have to acknowledge before we move any further.
So both of Buffy and Lara Croft really fall into the action heroine category. Where do you think the kind of like love for that kind of, I mean, we'd have one of our categories on this podcast is like badassery.
Yeah.
Where has that love come from, do you think?
I don't know, because
in our lives, we're not out there like ready to like have a fight or like, you know, we're not going to be signing up for the army anytime soon.
Yeah. We suck at sports.
Yeah. But where has that like, kind of preconception of like, it's cool to be like a badass fighting woman come from?
That is so... I don't know. I don't know. And I wonder if it is because, like, I'm so unathletic naturally that... Although actually I was athletic as a kid. So maybe it was that.
Yeah.
It was all those trips in the sixth form that I took to Sainsbury's that ruined me. but as a child, I don't know. There was something cool about watching girls do kind of typically male stuff. Like if you watch adult action films, it's all men doing that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's like Arnold Schwarzenegger running around, and it's always, you know, what's his name from Mission Impossible, and Tom Cruise and all these other guys. And suddenly girls are being brought into that space. But when the Lara Croft film came out, the original one with Angelina Jolie, not the remake and not the terrible sequel, I was like, my sister and I have watched that about 20 times. I love that film. But I remember thinking, wow, I want holsters. I want guns. I want she had the PlayStation game, Lara Croft, had the crop top and shorts outfit. Yeah. Angelina Jolie doesn't really wear that in the film. But I just remember, okay, this is really niche now, but there's like a scene in like Antarctica and she's in this kind of thermal cloak, and I remember thinking, I want that cloak. I really want that thermal cloak.
Yeah. I don't think it was ever about us wanting to be like the boys. I think there was something inherently like feminine about all these characters, but getting to do the cool stuff that was what was intriguing. Like none of us, we were never particularly tomboys or like wanted to be with the boys hanging out and doing all that stuff. It was more that it was okay to be feminine and also badass and action, and those things were one and the same.
Yeah, and in fact, that is especially true with Buffy.
Yeah.
Buffy is, when she's not slaying vampires, kind of a girly girl. Like, she cares about what she's going to wear to the prom. She cares about, like, her having her nails done, and she's got great... Like, Buffy is quite girly at her core. So, you're right, it meant that these two things can be compatible with each other.
Yeah.
And yeah, that just my teenage brain latched onto the Buffy-esque heroine. And that is where we progress to YA. Now we start to get Katniss.
Yeah. We do have to talk about Bella in the meantime.
Oh, God, do we?
She definitely came first.
She did.
And it's almost hard even to call her a heroine.
I know,
She's not really a heroine, so maybe we can skip over her, but I think she falls into the same group with the YA books, and you should go back and listen to our Twilight episode to hear more of our thoughts on Bella, so we won't dwell too long.
Well, we should say what you said about her, though, which I think was so true, which is that the power of Bella is she's kind of the every girl. She doesn't, at the start of the book, have anything particularly special. She doesn't have any powers. She's average.
She has very little character.
Very little character.
Yeah, I think I made the point that means you can project yourself into her shoes for the romance side of the story, and that works for the romance. But
you can become Bella, that's the
Yeah.
point, and you're there to fall in love
But as
with
a
Edward.
character, you're not going to go around like getting dressed up as Bella, because what would you be doing? You would just be kind of a bland, normal person.
Yeah.
Like-
She spends the first book just obsessed with Edward. And okay, to give her credit, she does go on that investigative mission to try and figure out if he's a vampire, which, shock, he is. But then she spends the second book kind of in that depressive coma state where she's, Edward's gone away. The second book is a depressive read. New Moon, she's really just moping a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And it's only when in the saga she finally gets turned into a vampire that I remember thinking, oh, thank God.
As soon as that happened,
Thank God.
As soon as that happened, any of her cool power is taken away by the fact that she has to get pregnant immediately and look after this like weird demon baby. Anyway, let's not get into it again.
We'll get too angry.
But I think that we can contrast her really strongly with Katniss, who we've literally just talked about in our Hunger Games episode, who is the opposite of Bella. She is her own independent person. She has extremely strong character traits. As we said, she's not that likable, which is maybe similar to some of the other characters we talk about, but she has a fierce protectiveness of her family. She has like really strong kind of moral beliefs. She's physically strong in that she's a huntress, and she provides for her family. And she takes a lot of brave actions throughout, and she has a really strong sense of a personality and character.
She is badass.
Yeah.
That's the reason that she's chosen as the figurehead for the rebellion. She's seen as a leader, as a fighter, and I don't know whether we would have got Katniss without the success of things like Lara Croft, Tomb Raider, Buffy, all of these things. So you can have a female action. And like that whole film franchise put its money behind, this is a gut, like we were talking about, the boys are basically irrelevant in that story.
Yeah.
And that is a major risk that paid off, which I thought was just awesome. But at the same time, I mean, who else is in that space? Then we get Triss as well in Divergent, same thing, kind of action. I mean, we'll have to talk about Divergent separately. But this idea that you have the female romaction hero was very, very cool.
And I think there was a time period at which we were probably only reading YA books with female leads. Like, I think when we were kids, we were probably reading a lot of books where the main character was a boy.
Yeah.
But by the time we got to 15, 16... the books we would pick up and be excited about would be with a female lead.
We did absolutely, I know it's more in the YA space and not in fantasy, but we did devour the Noughts and Crosses books.
Yeah.
And Sephi is the heroine of that. I can't remember how much kind of action there is. I mean, when they do have the...
Well,
there is the whole uprising and everything
massive,
as well.
Yeah, sort of rebellion again.
But she ends up being outspoken, incredibly brave, all of the things that we loved. And so she was definitely in our heroine category for YA. But we should also acknowledge that actually while we were teenagers, the number one thing that we were obsessed with above all else was Lord of the Rings.
It's true.
And what can we say about the female characters that are in Lord of the Rings?
I mean, there aren't really any.
They're scant.
But it's almost like I put Lord of the Rings in this like separate parallel category. It obviously didn't come out. I mean, the films came out, but the book had existed for such a long time before that it almost exists in a sort of parallel universe in my mind and doesn't fit into any of these existing categories.
So let's just say the films. We're going to talk about the films.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So in the first film, the only female character is Arwen.
Isn't like Sam's girlfriend briefly there?
Yeah, at the beginning, but she doesn't say anything. Maybe one sentence, but it's she's not a main character.
Yeah.
Whereas at least Arwen was a named kind of posterable character.
Oh, and Galadriel is in Fellowship.
Yes, true.
Okay.
Galadriel is in Fellowship.
Two people that have like lines.
Yeah.
And even the films, try and enhance the incredibly scant material from the books. And I wonder whether when like Peter Jackson and Fran Walsh were looking at how to adapt this, they were really thinking, oh God, we're going to need to, we can't proceed with this.
Well, they basically pulled Aragorn and Arwen's story out of the appendices of the Lord of the Rings and into the main plot, which it isn't really in the books. It's kind of briefly referenced, but
and we will be forever grateful for that. Thank you, universe, that happened. But Arwen, boring character. You know, not even her and like the elves. They're just none of them. The only female character in all of Lord of the Rings that I remotely thought, okay, I get on board with this, was Éowyn.
Yeah.
When we start to get Éowyn,
she's a heroine.
She's a heroine.
Yeah.
But she ends up in... okay, we're going to have to talk about this at length another time. But I could not get past the fact that Aragorn, who is my complete love of my like early teenage years, doesn't choose Éowyn. And it makes me so angry because Arwen sucks. And I'm like, come on, Aragorn, look.
But I mean, yeah, Lord of the Rings just lives in like, it doesn't follow the kind of styles and expectations of a modern kind of story. Arwen and Aragorn are like this kind of epic mythical romance that lives on like another plane of existence that like it's this fantastical kind of, yeah, they're not meant to be relatable characters. I don't think anyone apart from the hobbits in the Lord of the Rings are meant to be relatable characters. It's almost like a mythos or a history book rather than any character being somebody that you could root for and want to be. It's just like, yeah, it lives on a different type of story.
If Lord of the Rings was rewritten today for us, for our kind of reader expectations, the character arc would be that Aragorn thinks he loves Arwen and, you know, leaves thinking, oh, okay, yep, I'm sort of engaged to the princess woman who's incredibly 1D, and then meets Éowyn, who's like practicing with swords and being awesome and like disguises herself to go off to the war, and she kills the Witch King. Of like, yes, Éowyn. She is such a boss, and she gets that great line, the "I am no man" line. And I'm like, yes.
But then I think
Aragorn would end up with Éowyn if it was rewritten.
But they tried to essentially rewrite Lord of the Rings with the new Amazon series, and it didn't work.
Hate it.
They tried to bring in let's try and make this more appealing to, in theory, modern audiences.
Yeah, they messed up.
And it doesn't work.
It was so bad.
I completely disagree that would have been a better storyline. I think it would be just, I think we would end up with the equivalent of the Amazon series, which is what we ended up with.
Okay, well, in light of that, then maybe I'll let it stand. That was so abysmal. Anyway, but by contrast, if we're still in the high fantasy space, and the high fantasy space is different from the YA space, from the NA, the new adult space that we'll come to in a minute, but high fantasy, I mean, the other thing we loved a little bit later on was we were obsessed with Game of Thrones. And that had some better...
Oh, it had so many great female characters.
So many.
And they're all so political. And I mean, the whole books, I mean, I know that a lot of people think of Game of Thrones as the action and the wars and the death and destruction. But the really interesting and fascinating thing about Game of Thrones is actually the characters and the characterization and the politics and like interesting scheming between all of them. And the women are 100% a part of all of that political intrigue.
Who do you love? Who should we start with? I love them all.
Oh, I think my biggest love would probably have to be Sansa.
Okay, defend Sansa for me, because she's boring for me for several seasons.
No, well, that's the thing, is that she starts off as she's set up to be the princess. Her expectation in life is that she's the oldest daughter of a great lord, and that she's going to be married off to the king and get to be queen. And she has this fantasy, which is so relatable. She's just a normal girl who is brought up in a medieval style society to think that that's her goal in life. And at every turn, it's like cut away and taken from her, and she's just like, she survives through like her father being killed in front of her eyes, her husband turning out to be an absolute like abusive, terrible person, her then being shipped off to someone else, and at every turn she's like cut down, and yet like she comes out of it with, she works out what the Game of Thrones is. She is extremely intelligent. She plays the game quite early on and is able to get herself into a situation where she ends up in like basically the most powerful position in the North, because
Queen of the North.
Yeah. Because underneath all that like fantasy that she had when she was, I mean, she's meant to be like a child at the beginning. Literally a child, not a teenager.
No.
A child. And she's just as intelligent and goes through such horrific things that she learns so much and becomes, one of the strongest players in the Game of Thrones.
The great thing about the span of Game of Thrones is its length, the number of books and the number of seasons does mean you can get this huge character development and huge change, because I find Sansa unwatchable for the first couple of seasons, but then that is, as you say, what makes her so enjoyable later.
Yeah.
Because you think, yes, girl, finally, thank God.
Also, she's a ginger and I'll always root for the gingers. So
yeah. But when you look at who and what Sansa survives, she has to be one of the all-time Game of Thrones heroines in the end.
Yeah.
Whereas there's slightly more obvious out-and-out heroism from like Arya from the beginning, from Daenerys from the beginning. Absolutely, like it killed me at the end of the terrible season 8 that we tried and forget doesn't exist.
Yeah,
that Daenerys' character goes the way that it does.
Yeah.
If you haven't watched season 8, don't listen to this.
Or don't watch it.
Or just don't watch it. 100%. End at the end of season 7.
Yeah.
Let's just
Or
call
6.
that the end. Or 6. Yeah. Because I thought I've invested in Daenerys for so long. I want her to break the wheel, free the people. And it went a bit the way that we were talking about President Coin in the Hunger Games. That it turns out that the rebellion, that the uprising ends up just being as totalitarian a replacement.
And I think that could be done well. And I have faith that if the books are ever finished, I think it's likely that character will go the same way, but it will be done so much better. It didn't work in the last season because it was so rushed. You just couldn't see anything from her perspective. You were like, why is this character that I really liked gone completely mad really, really quickly? And I can't relate to it. Whereas if we were actually to see, like, over time, how striving for this goal, which she's had since she was young, to be the ruler of Westeros, if we could see how that goal in and of itself would destroy a person, like, that could be super interesting, and she could still be a really relatable and interesting character. But it just happens so fast. You're just like, this is not Daenerys.
I agree. She went mad within about 2 episodes. And considering we'd watched her for hours and hours and years, I felt cheated.
And we have to acknowledge that she did bad things in earlier seasons.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, she wasn't like nobody in Game of Thrones is like some virtuous person. That's just not the style of the show or the books. But we always understood her motivations for doing terrible things, and at the end it just was completely unmotivated.
Controversial opinion. I love Cersei.
Yeah.
And I'm going to defend Cersei.
Oh, Cersei's great.
I love Cersei. She to me is great from the beginning, and it's so wonderful the way her character and Sansa's are thrown into close proximity with each other and have a very difficult relationship with each other, because Cersei in some way is an older version of Sansa. She has had to play the princess role and the queen role, but she's cleverer than them all.
Yeah.
She has had to survive horror after horror after horror. She can't be with the slightly controversial person that she wants to be with. But it is... her character, I just thought, was an absolute boss. And there were moments of... there was enough light and dark for me not to completely villainize her. Okay, she does some horrendous things.
But this is the whole point of Game of Thrones,
Yeah.
is that you are interested and understand the way that bad people think. And it's interesting because even if they are bad, you can still see inside their heads and get to the bottom of their characters. And I think that's why Cersei works really well as a character, is because she might be nasty, but you really understand how and why.
I was devastated when Cersei died. Really, that was one of the... I was crushed that she was crushed.
Yeah.
It was terrible. And that really moved me because even at the end, she spent that whole last season being one of the almost villainous characters. But, I just love it. I'm just going to defend Cersei. She's one of my favourite heroines in Game of Thrones.
And we should also just give some extra mentions before we move on to Arya and to Brienne as well.
Brienne, yes!
Like, there is just so many great female characters in that franchise. So,
there's loads, and there are so many that are earlier on and just get swiftly killed that we can't even go through and acknowledge. But yes, that Game of Thrones, I think, corrects... it moves in, it's in the high fantasy space with things like Lord of the Rings, but completely repairs that imbalance between the male and female characters that Lord of the Rings has a bit of a problem with. Yeah. And now we are in who do we love? Now we've got to talk about the evolution from Daenerys to Violet Sorrengail. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah, and into this new genre that we talked about a lot in the Fourth Wing episode of romantasy, which certainly centers female heroines who often have some kind of, action side to them, but also have a really strong kind of romance plot always in these kind of fantasy spaces.
Yeah, and this is there is something about people's brain chemistry that literally tracks from 90s Disney to the Hunger Games, Twilight era. Oh God, I did that thing of grouping them together that I said we shouldn't do.
They came out around the same time. It's okay.
Who now you can bet good money have read Fourth Wing.
Yeah.
And I know you don't like A Court of Thorns and Roses, but my big issue with your reaction to that, and it's valid, is that A Court of Thorns and Roses, the first book, the heroine, Feyre, is rubbish.
Yeah.
But she gets better, I swear.
Yeah, if a first book in a series is just bad, I will not read a second one. In fact, I'm amazed I finished it. Normally, if a book is that bad, I wouldn't finish it.
I have had to have this conversation with everyone I've lent that book to. I swear, keep going.
No,
I promise.
There is no justification in saying you must read a whole series, but it only gets good in the second book. It's unacceptable.
The second book is a masterpiece. But for people who have read those, Feyre is an evolution, I think, of Katniss. She's an archer. She starts off as a huntress. Her family are starving. In fact, if you read the opening chapters of A Court of Thorns and Roses, it is like reading the opening chapters of Hunger Games.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, Katniss is out in the forest hunting. You're told that her family are starving. She's the only person that has any kind of ability to put food on the table.
The rest of her family, as I remember, were, at least at the beginning, kind of portrayed as completely useless, though. They were
Feyre's or
Feyre's?
Yeah, useless.
They're they used to be wealthy, and then now they won't even look after themselves because they lost all their money. They just kind of mope about.
That's actually the same, though, as very detailed, but Katniss describes her mother was quite a well-to-do sort of apothecary woman, and then it all went downhill. So when I started reading Court of Thorns and Roses, I thought, Sarah?
Sounds familiar.
This sounds familiar to me, doesn't it? I think you might have read Suzanne Collins. But Feyre does, I promise, go on to be like a full-out action heroine, badass, all the cool stuff. And in the later books, we follow her sister, Nesta, who I just adore. To all the Nesta people out there, I love Nesta. I love Nesta.
How do you, in your mind, kind of, in that romantasy type genre, kind of balance those two things? The kind of coolness of the action side of things and the getting stuff done and the being an interesting character with the fantasy plot. Because I think when you look at younger versions of some of these stories, it almost feels like you have to choose one or the other. And this genre firmly like throws those two things together and says, no,
you can have both.
You can have both. It's fine to want exactly what we wanted when we were younger, which is we absolutely wanted to be badass and run around in the woods with a bow and arrow, in theory, not in real life.
Yeah.
But we also were obsessed with the guys and wanted to obsess over them and like fawn over them. And it was okay to hold both of those things, or at least now it feels like it's more okay to hold both of those things in your mind, whereas in the past maybe you had to choose one or the other.
So I would argue that new adult romantasy, this category we're talking about that we love now, is a return to 90s Disney. Because Mulan wouldn't be the film that it is without the romance plot at the same time that is absolutely woven throughout. I mean, Pocahontas is canoeing around and diving off waterfalls, but she loves John Smith.
Yeah.
And the adult fantasy space, the new adult romantasy space, does let those two things happen. We should also acknowledge that these are bigger books. So in young adult, like if you look at the length of Hunger Games or the first Twilight book, they're relatively slim volumes. These are designed to be read easily in paperback, taken in a kid's suitcase on a holiday. Whereas the Sarah J. Maas books and we said last time we had Fourth Wing and Iron Flame propping up our podcast microphone because these are like doorstop volumes that I guess the length of books that are new adult or romantasy mean that there is space for a really fully fledged fantasy plot, loads of world building, awesome heroines, and like a really adult romance narrative. And I love it all. Yeah. I love it. It's everything I want all together. So, and maybe on that we should wrap up with Violet, who has emerged as the new kind of Katniss. Everybody's going dressed as Violet to dress up parties, Halloween, that kind of stuff. We talked about her a bit last time, but she is the embodiment, isn't she, of all of these things that we've talked about so far.
And she adds to that you can have it all kind of narrative in that not only is she able to be the action heroine and be the romantic lead, but she's also allowed to have the vulnerability and the kind of normality of kind of she's not physically the strongest, and she has flaws in a way that maybe someone like Katniss doesn't.
Yep. We should say, any honorary mentions that we haven't had time to... I'll start off with two.
Okay.
While you're thinking about it. Okay, honorary mention. This is niche. Do you remember BBC's Robin Hood?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Now, we will talk about that a separate time. But that entered into the conversation of feminine kind of action because they made Maid Marian cool.
Yeah.
Ish. Not 100%. She still does a lot of the standing around talking scheming, but she was pretty cool. We were into that show a lot. And in the Vampire Diaries, oh my God, what is her name?
Elena.
Thank you. Elena is, I think, a slightly more interesting version of Bella.
Yeah.
She is still cool when she becomes a vampire. We loved the Vampire Diaries. So yeah, honorary mentions to Elena Gilbert and Maid Marian in Robin Hood. There must be like, We're going to come away from this
there's
recording.
so many more. There's so many more, but I think we'll have to leave it there. Maybe you guys can send us on Instagram your favourite heroines.
Yeah, please do. Who did we miss? And we're going to have to do it. I think we're going to have to do a poll on Disney heroines.
Yeah.
And that's going to get excitable. All right, well, we will see you guys and record another time. Bye for now.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Fangirl Diaries. Follow us on Instagram at Fangirl Diaries Pod.
And do share us with any of your friends that you think might enjoy the podcast, and rate or review us on Spotify or Apple Music.